Marina had always had a strange relationship with antiques. Since childhood, she felt drawn to objects that carried stories, whispers of past lives etched into every scratch, every stain of time. So when she decided to open her antique shop in the historic center of Petropolis, she knew she was following her destiny. The shop, Lost Memories, was housed in a 19th-century building, with thick stone walls and tall windows that filtered sunlight into golden beams. Marina had inherited the building from a distant aunt she had never met in person, only through letters written in trembling handwriting that arrived sporadically during her childhood. It was on a rainy March morning that the doll came to her. An elderly man with disheveled white hair and clothes that seemed to have been elegant decades ago entered the shop carrying an ornate wooden box. His eyes were a faded blue, like a winter sky, and his hands trembled slightly as he placed the box on the counter. "I need to get rid of this," he murmured, avoiding Marina's gaze. I can't have her in my house anymore." Marina opened the box with curiosity. Inside, wrapped in dark red velvet fabric, was the most beautiful doll she had ever seen. It was about 60 centimeters tall, made of the finest quality porcelain. Her face was of angelic perfection, snow-white skin, rosy cheeks, perfectly drawn red lips. But it was the eyes that impressed most, green like emeralds, so realistic they seemed to follow every movement. The doll's hair was real, long golden curls that gleamed even in the shop's dim light. She wore a navy blue velvet dress with white lace on the sleeves and a satin ribbon in her hair. It was a work of art, clearly made by master craftsmen from an era when perfection was more important than speed of production. "She's magnificent," whispered Marina, gently touching the porcelain face. "She must be worth a fortune." The man recoiled as if she had uttered a blasphemy. "I don't want money for her. Just take her away from me." "But, sir—" "She belonged to my daughter," he interrupted, his voice choked with emotion. "Clarice died 50 years ago when she was only 7 years old. Since then, this doll gives me no peace." Marina felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean by that?" The man looked at the doll with a mixture of fear and sadness. "At night, I would hear her crying in Clarice's room. Real tears would run down her porcelain face. And sometimes I would find her in places where I hadn't left her. In the kitchen, sitting at the table. In the living room, looking out the window. Once, I woke up in the middle of the night and she was at the foot of my bed, just watching." "Sir, are you suggesting that?" "I'm saying there's something in this doll that isn't natural. My daughter loved her more than anything in the world. When she died of pneumonia, Clarice was hugging her. And since then I feel as if part of my daughter's soul got trapped in there." Marina looked at the doll again. The green eyes seemed to glow with their own light, and for an instant, she had the impression that the porcelain lips curved into an almost imperceptible smile. "What's her name?" Marina asked. "Isabel. Clarice called her Isabel." The man left the shop without looking back, leaving Marina alone with her new acquisition. She placed the doll on a high shelf, from where Isabel could see the entire shop with her penetrating green eyes. In the first few days, nothing abnormal happened. Marina even forgot about the old man's dramatic story, focusing on cataloging pieces, serving customers, and organizing inventory. Isabel remained motionless on her shelf, a beautiful decoration that caught the attention of everyone who entered the shop. It was on Thursday that Marina began to notice the first oddities. She arrived at the shop in the morning and found Isabel in a slightly different position. The doll, who had been looking toward the entrance before, was now turned toward the window. Marina frowned, trying to remember if she had moved her the day before. Maybe during cleaning. On Friday, Isabel was again in a different position. This time, her small porcelain hands were crossed over her lap, when Marina was certain they had been at her sides before. "I'm getting paranoid," she murmured to herself, repositioning the doll. It must be the stress of the new shop. But when she arrived on Saturday morning, Isabel was no longer on the shelf. Marina searched throughout the shop, her heart beating faster and faster. She found the doll sitting in an old chair at the back of the shop, facing a foggy mirror. She seemed to be admiring herself, or perhaps talking to her own reflection. "This is impossible," whispered Marina, her hands trembling as she picked up Isabel. The porcelain was strangely warm, as if it had been heated by the sun, although it was in a shaded area of the shop. That night, Marina decided to take Isabel home. She lived in a small but cozy apartment with a view of the mountains. She placed the doll in a living room armchair where she could see her while watching television. It was around 2 in the morning that Marina woke to a strange sound. It was footsteps, small footsteps, like those of a child, walking through the apartment. She got out of bed, her heart racing, and went to the living room. Isabel was no longer in the armchair. Marina turned on all the lights and searched throughout the apartment. She found the doll in the kitchen, sitting on a high chair, facing the table set for breakfast. It was as if she were patiently waiting for the meal. "My God," murmured Marina, feeling her legs wobble. "What's happening here?" She took Isabel and carried her back to the living room, placing her in a closed cabinet. "You're going to stay there until I figure out what to do with you." But when she woke the next morning, Isabel was again in the living room armchair, as if she had never left. The cabinet remained closed, with no signs of having been opened. Marina spent all of Sunday researching haunted dolls on the internet. She found dozens of similar stories. Old dolls that moved by themselves, that cried, that seemed to have a life of their own. Some people believed that objects much loved by children who died young could retain part of their spiritual energy. Other theories were darker. They spoke of malevolent spirits that appropriated inanimate objects, using them as vessels to manifest in the physical world. On Monday, Marina arrived at the shop determined to get rid of Isabel. But when she saw the doll sitting gracefully on her shelf, with that angelic face and golden curls gleaming in the morning light, she felt a strange hesitation. "Maybe I'm imagining things," she murmured, arranging Isabel's blue dress. "Maybe it's just stress, the change." That day, an elegant lady entered the shop looking for an old doll for her granddaughter. Her eyes lit up when she saw Isabel. "She's perfect," she exclaimed. "How much are you asking for her?" Marina opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come out. She looked at Isabel and had the clear impression that the doll was looking back, with an almost pleading expression. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "She's not for sale." The lady insisted, offering increasingly higher amounts, but Marina stood firm. After the frustrated customer left, Marina looked at Isabel and whispered, "Why couldn't I sell her? Why do I feel like it would be betrayal to let her go?" That night, Marina had her first dream. She was in a large, old house with heavy furniture covered by white sheets. She could hear the sound of a child laughing somewhere in the house, a crystalline and joyful laugh that echoed through the empty corridors. She followed the sound until she reached a nursery. A small girl with golden hair and green eyes was playing with a doll identical to Isabel. The child was pale, very pale, and when she looked at Marina, her lips moved without producing sound. Marina woke with tears in her eyes, not knowing why she was crying. The dreams continued on the following nights. Always the same house, always the same child. Sometimes Marina saw the girl sick in bed, hugging Isabel. Other times, she witnessed happy moments, imaginary tea parties, stories told by the fireplace, games in the garden. Gradually, Marina began to understand. The doll wasn't haunted by a malevolent spirit. Clarice, the child who had died 50 years ago, was still there, trapped between two worlds, attached to the only object that connected her to the life she had lost so early. "You're trying to tell me your story, aren't you?" whispered Marina to Isabel on a rainy afternoon. "You want me to know who you really are." It was then that she decided to investigate. She researched in the city archives, in death records, in newspaper libraries. It wasn't hard to find the story of Clarice Montero, only daughter of Roberto Montero, who died of pneumonia in 1973 at 7 years old. The news of the time described a cheerful and intelligent child, adored by her parents. A grainy photograph showed a smiling girl hugging a porcelain doll. It was Isabel, without doubt. Marina also discovered that Roberto Montero had lost his wife a few years after his daughter's death. The man had lived alone since then, in a large house on Imperator Street, where he had raised Clarice. She decided to pay a visit. The house was exactly like in her dreams, an imposing 19th century construction with neglected gardens and windows fogged by time. Roberto Montero received her with surprise and apprehension. Did you bring her back?" he asked, nervously looking over Marina's shoulder. "No, Mr. Montero. I came to talk about your daughter." The man led her to a dark room full of furniture covered by sheets. It was the same environment from Marina's dreams. "Clarice was everything to me," began Roberto, his voice choked with emotion. "After my wife's death, she became my only reason for living. She was a special child, you know? Intelligent, affectionate, and had an incredible imagination." "Tell me about Isabel." Roberto sighed deeply. The doll was a Christmas gift when Clarice turned 6. It cost a fortune, made by specialized French craftsmen. Clarice fell in love with her instantly. She said Isabel was her best friend, her sister, her confidant. And when Clarice got sick, she wouldn't separate from the doll for even a minute. Even when her fever was high, when she could barely open her eyes, she held Isabel against her chest. In the end, when the doctor said there was nothing more to be done, Clarice asked me to promise I would take care of Isabel as if she were a real person. Roberto wiped his eyes with a yellowed handkerchief. "I promised, and I kept that promise for 50 years. But she wouldn't let me rest." It was as if Clarice was trying to come back through the doll. Marina felt her heart tighten. "Mr. Montero, have you ever considered that maybe Clarice isn't trying to haunt you? Maybe she just doesn't want you to suffer alone." "What do you mean?" "A 7-year-old child who dies doesn't fully understand the concept of death. To her, it might just be a temporary separation. Maybe Clarice is trying to comfort you, trying to show that she's still there, somehow." Roberto looked at Marina with wide eyes. "Do you really believe that?" "I believe that the love between a father and daughter is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. And I believe that sometimes that love transcends even death." That night, Marina had another dream, but this time it was different. Clarice appeared clearer, more real. She was sitting on a swing in the garden of the house, with Isabel on her lap. "Thank you for understanding," said the girl, with a voice sweet as honey. "Daddy was so sad. I just wanted him to know I didn't really go away." "But you can't stay trapped here forever, Clarice. You need to move on." The girl shook her head, her golden curls dancing in the wind. "I know. But I'm scared. Scared of leaving Daddy alone, scared that he'll forget me." "He'll never forget you. A father's love for his daughter is eternal. But you need to trust that he'll be okay." Clarice hugged Isabel tighter. "And if I go away, what will happen to her? Isabel needs to be freed too. She's not a prison, Clarice. She was made to bring joy, not to trap souls." The girl remained silent for a long moment, swinging gently. "There's a girl who needs her now. More than I do." Marina woke with these words echoing in her mind. The next morning, a young mother entered the shop with a small child in her arms. The girl, about 5 years old, was clearly ill, pale, thin, with her head covered by a colorful scarf that barely disguised the lack of hair. "I'm looking for something special for my daughter," explained the mother, with tears in her eyes. "She's going through a very difficult treatment, and I thought maybe a beautiful doll could bring a little joy to her." The child looked around the shop with large, curious eyes, until her gaze landed on Isabel. Her little face lit up with a genuine smile, the first Marina had seen since she entered. "Mommy, look! She's just like me!" exclaimed the girl, pointing at Isabel. "She has green eyes like mine." Marina felt her heart squeeze. The resemblance was striking. The same bright green eyes, the same sweet expression, the same aura of pure innocence. "What's your name, dear?" asked Marina, kneeling beside the child. "Sophia." "And what's her name?" she asked, looking at Isabel. Marina looked at the doll and had the clear impression that she was smiling. "Her name is Hope." Sophia's mother tried to negotiate the price, but Marina insisted on giving the doll as a gift. "Some things are priceless," she said, placing Isabel, now Hope, in Sophia's small hands. The girl hugged the doll with surprising strength for someone so fragile. "Thank you. I'll take very good care of her." That night, Marina had no dreams of Clarice. A few weeks later, she received a letter from Sophia. The child had drawn a stick figure representing herself and her doll, with a huge yellow sun smiling in the corner of the paper. The mother had written a note explaining that Sophia was responding better to treatment, that she had regained her appetite and started smiling again. She says Hope tells her stories during chemotherapy sessions, wrote the mother. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and hear Sophia talking quietly with the doll, as if she really answered back. It might seem strange, but I swear that since Hope came to us, everything became easier. Marina smiled, storing the letter in a special drawer. Months later, Roberto Montero appeared again at the shop. But this time he was different, more upright, with bright eyes and a peace in his face that hadn't been there before. "She's gone, isn't she?" he asked, although he already knew the answer. "Clarice found her way," confirmed Marina. "She was just waiting to be sure you'd be okay." Roberto nodded, smiling for the first time in decades. "You know, for the first time in 50 years, I managed to sleep a whole night without disturbing dreams. And when I wake up, instead of sadness, I feel gratitude. Gratitude for having had such a wonderful daughter, even if for a short time." "And how are you dealing with loneliness?" "I started doing volunteer work at a children's hospital," said Roberto, with a gleam in his eyes. "I read stories to sick children. It's incredible how they respond. It's as if Clarice were guiding me to where I can make a difference." He paused, looking around the shop. "You did something extraordinary, you know? Not just for me, but for Clarice too. And for whoever received Isabel. Actually, her name is Hope now." Roberto smiled. "Perfect name. Clarice always said Isabel was made of hope and dreams." When Roberto left, Marina felt a sense of completeness she hadn't experienced in a long time. She looked around the shop, filled with objects that carried stories, memories, lost and found loves. Each piece there had a story to tell, a soul to touch. And Marina understood that her role wasn't just to sell antiques, it was to help these stories find their appropriate ending, to connect the past with the present in a way that brought healing and not pain. That night, as she closed the shop, Marina heard a soft sound, almost imperceptible. It was like a child's laughter, distant and melodious, carried by the wind. She looked up and was sure she saw a small shadow waving from the second-floor window, before disappearing in the golden light of the sunset. "Thank you, Clarice," whispered Marina, "for teaching me that sometimes the most haunted things are just the most loved ones." And so, in the small antique shop in the historic center of Petropolis, among clocks that no longer marked time and mirrors that reflected ancient memories, Marina continued her work of healing broken hearts, both of the living and the dead. Because she discovered that in the world of antiques, the line between the natural and the supernatural is as thin as a silk thread, and sometimes the most frightening thing isn't what we see, but what we feel. The weight of love that transcends death itself, desperately searching for a way to continue caring for those it left behind. And somewhere in the city, a girl named Sophia slept hugging her doll Hope, dreaming of adventures in sunny gardens where a special friend with golden hair waited for